Hey guys, today's video is about the best speaker upgrade. And it's an interesting video because when you think about it, you can't really upgrade your speakers. You can upgrade the sound quality you get, by, let's say, improving the equipment downstream. And this strictly isn't a speaker upgrade, but it is kind of in a way the closest thing I can think of that is a speaker upgrade, other than having a DIY kit and improving the crossover network or something like that. It's something you can do to your speakers, especially if you've got floor standing or bookshelf speakers that are put onto stands. Now, the product I'm talking about is the Acoustics Gaia. Now, they seem like a pretty simple product. All they are feet that you screw into the bottom of your speakers. You pull out the spikes that you might have or the stands you might have, and you replace them and you get them put onto the bottom of your speakers with a very simple install. And what they basically do is they try to decouple the speakers from the room, and you get this usual cabinet resonance, right? There's music, there's audio, and you're getting forces pushing in a lot of directions, especially backwards and forward, because as the cone's driving energy this way, obviously, a lot of energy is coming this way. And what that does is it creates this sort of cabinet resonance and let's call it movement. And if that's going straight into the floor, you're going to get problems with things like vibration. And also, not only that, it just can create problems with the audio. What these are designed to do is sort of get that audio that creates the movement, let's call the music that creates the movement of the speaker, especially this way, and sort of just absorb it in a natural way so that you're not getting any vibration whatsoever and decoupling it from the room and the floor. By doing this, what it's doing is essentially you'll feel with this speaker, it can slightly sort of move just ever so slightly because I have the feet on. And what this does is, as there's those micro movements due to the power of the sound waves, that movement is just sort of allowed to sort of naturally just give the tiniest bit. Not a lot, they're not wobbling around, but it's absorbed into the second plate, which is then connected through to the ground. And by the time it's connected into the ground, it's all been absorbed. Now, don't get me wrong, your speakers aren't moving around when there's audio. It's probably less than like a nanometer of give that it provides. But when it comes down to it, you're not going to feel that vibration in the floor that you can feel sometimes when it comes to listening to audio. And especially when I come very close to the speaker and I touch near it, or you feel the cabinet, you feel the ground underneath it or next to it, there's a big difference. But now you're saying, cool, great, it's a feat for my speakers, it's going to do this anti-vibration stuff, but what does that mean? Put simply, as I do all my reviews, I'm just going to tell you what it does and what it did for me. Alright, so in traditional Believe Hi-Fi format, I'm going to tell you about the sound implications. And I'm going to try explain it in a way that isn't trying to just give you every technical detail and then you get a bit lost and thinking, oh, well, he said it does this to the mids and therefore I know what it sounds like. I'm just going to give you, what did I hear in my room? Now, just to let you know, my room is at the moment not treated very well. I'm doing a whole bunch of makeshift things, like I've got a very thick rug, which you should do anyway. I've got some panels and things set up on the back, but I'm actually using 2 mattresses I got for free that I place usually in behind here. And what I did was make do with what I have, because I want to DIY all the rest of my panels. And it's just a bit of a tip for you guys and a random thing I'm throwing into this video, that if you don't have all these acoustic panels and you notice your room's a little too lively, you can just sort of make do with household items or things that you could get for free. Another trick I do is, at the moment I'm using a very large beanbag, because again, this room is very lively. There's tiles, you've got the walls that are hard, the roof that's hard, everything's hard, and the sound of this room was so so lively. If you clapped in here, it was just slap echo central. So just a quick tip and something I'm throwing into the video: get creative when it comes to trying to just dampen the sound of your room. And obviously even things like plants, I don't usually have the plant here, I just move it here for the video, but just putting a few plants into the room not only makes it feel nicer to be in, but also they can actually absorb a bit of sound and sort of diffuse a little bit of sound. If you get something with thick rubbery leaves like this with a very thick stem through the middle, it's not going to be as good as a proper treatment, but it's something that just helps a little and it adds to the environment of the room. Don't go overboard. Anyway, segue out the way, back to how did they sound and what did they do. So in this room, which isn't perfect yet, but it does sound pretty good, the first thing was the worst thing. And that was I had the speakers dialed in exactly. Now, I am so anal when it comes to my speaker setup. I literally play with millimeters at a time for hours in terms of slight adjustments in tone and moving the speaker forward and moving the speaker backwards, because as I know, there's this magic spot. It's not, oh, it's close enough, I feel like the singer's there. There's this spot where it happens and your whole body relaxes and the sound is just right. You'll swear that it's not just, oh yeah, the singer's in the middle, everything's done. No, you'll feel that raised up a little bit and it's a voice coming from the right side. You'll hear everything as it's meant to be and it'll sound natural and beautiful. And I drew in pencil on the tiles where I had them set up before, and I tried to, I have to take them off and put the feed on. I tried to put them exactly in the same spot, and I think I got close, but when I first listened, it kind of destroyed the imaging that I had, and I started getting annoyed. I was thinking, surely it couldn't make that much of a difference just changing the feed, and now the imaging's ruined, and but I did hear some encouraging signs. Anyway, frustrations aside, once I played around with the speakers, just millimeter by millimeter, made some very small adjustments. Again, I got them into where they needed to be. And I had to make some adjustments that were bigger than I would have expected. But anyway, long story short, I got them where they needed to be. And here is the result. Number one thing I noticed, the imaging became more precise and more real and more three-dimensional. What I mean by that is, let's take a guitar from a track that you know very well. Now, a guitar should sit somewhere in the mix, right? But it shouldn't just be, oh, there's a guitar somewhere a little bit close to my right speaker. You should be able to be like, I can picture the guitar player sitting down. The guitar is at this level. I can feel the strings are over here, and I can feel that that person's in the room with me. What this did was it created a more like spherical area that exactly sat in. That's exactly where the guitar sat. And in terms of three-dimensionally, what I meant is that there was sort of space. It felt like there was space in front, space behind, and space to either side of the instrument in which you could breathe in, and I could hear that instrument. And there's a song called Light Years Away, and I listened to that, and the sound of that guitar should be just inside the left speaker, or if you close your eyes, sort of just right there. And it should really feel like there's someone sitting there playing that guitar, and it should be right there. Super obvious. It's in my Believe Hi-Fi test playlist, so you can check out my other video if you want to get that playlist, but it should just be very obviously there, and then the vocalist comes into the middle. And with a vocalist, it's generally the easiest way to test imaging, because again, rather than this sort of vague area where the speech would come from, again, it became more definite as like a circle. Like that's the vocalist's area. There's a bit of breathing room in all directions, behind, in front, and to the sides, and there's a bit of space, and then boom, there's whatever sound needs to be there, or even if another sound is quite wide. There's a song by Niall Horan, you guys probably know, called This Town. It's quite popular. I think it was in One Direction or something, so it's a bit of a interesting one that I listened to, but there's a live version of that track. And the cool thing about the live version is it's a very nice recording. Actually, you hear the room. And what it does is the speakers completely disappear and he's just right there in the middle. You can hear his guitar just slightly off to one side, slightly, as it should be, because you're holding guitar here and your voice is here. But what that does is it really is a good test for your imaging, because you should be able to pretty much clearly feel a body dead center. You shouldn't feel like you can hear anything from the speakers. It should be right dead center, almost like there's a center channel speaker, and he should be playing there. And it should feel like there's a lot of room around him to each side. And there's this massive sense of scale, but it's almost like silent scale. And again, what these feet did, they created way more breathing room. It felt like I was sitting in this huge theater rather than, having, oh, he's in the middle, it's nice. And again, it was almost like, rather than this faded out of focus outline where I can kind of see where he is, it was almost like a more definite outline that I could now draw. So that's really what I got as the number one thing. The number two thing, which I was surprised about, I thought I was going to hear more in terms of bass definition, but it was actually the high frequencies that actually got better for me. And when I say better, they just seemed less brittle and harsh and more sweet sounding. And not only more sweet sounding, again, because the imaging is better, it's almost like you get easier detail clarification of everything. It's nothing sort of smears into each other's space. So therefore, you can hear more detail of every little instrument, especially in a busy passage of music. So when you combine that really improved focus in terms of the image and the sweeter high end with more detail and more space, you can really hear a lot more of what's going on. And finally, I did mention it, the bass performance did get better. A little less sort of decay and a bit, you get that little bit in your bass. There's always one node in almost every room, and you just feel there's that one spot, and you can find a song that really makes it sound bad. It does really help with the bass and tame a little bit of wildness, let's say, and create a more accurate bass response. And I'm pretty surprised that they gave me this level of performance. It almost feels like I did upgrade one of my components. It's kind of like, almost like, let's say you upgraded your source. It does have that sort of level of improvement when it comes to your sound. It's actually very viable, and therefore, would I recommend that you purchase it? I would say hell yes. You can spend a hell of a lot more money upgrading your signal path, a hell of a lot more money, and get a similar difference in terms of what it's bringing, and maybe even less of a difference than what you're getting brought to the table. These do make a difference more than I would have liked to admit. I always go into everything like, all right, let's see what actually happens here. And as I said, initially I was like, what's going on? Everything's ruined. I had them dialed in, and now it sounds worse. Maybe there's something wrong with them. But when you get it dialed in, it's better. It's just better. Better detail, better separation, better imaging, nicer sounding highs, and a more controlled bass response. So I think I've painted the most accurate picture I can. And I know they seem pricey for what they are, but when it comes to the price to performance ratio, what it actually brings into the sound, it's more than worth it. It's actually somewhat of a bargain. You can spend thousands to get an improve in terms of your imaging, your detail. If I told you, I'm gonna give you a product and it's gonna increase detail, imaging, separation, the 3D nature of the sound, the bass response, you would be like, wow, what DAC is it? What amp is it? What power supply is it? What is it? And I would say, oh, it's just feet for your speakers. So while they might seem expensive for what they are, price to performance is actually very good. But anyway, that's it for today. Please like and subscribe. Really means a lot. I'm trying to grow the channel, got a lot more videos planned, and I hope I keep it exciting and interesting for you guys. All right, I'll catch you on the next one.